Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you believe it's possible for the Christian God to exist or impossible? That way we won't label you. We'll just let your answer do it, my friend. We're just casually talking. This isn't a trick question where all of a sudden you instantly become a Christian. Okay, so he says it's perfectly possible and internally consistent. Okay, very good. So you're an agnostic, right? Well, here's the question I have for you, the one, and you could answer it on the mic if you want. Do you agree with me that here's the question I want to ask you. Let's say Joe is an atheist and he claims it's impossible for God to exist. Would you say that he's an atheist, or would you say he's an agnostic? What do you guys think? If Joe says it's impossible for God to exist, is he an atheist or an agnostic? I would say he's an atheist. Yeah. So he's an atheist. So here's the other question I have for you. Now, what if someone says it's possible for God to exist? And this is up to you, the one. I'll let you answer this. Do you believe that if someone says it's possible for God to exist, they're an atheist? He says, the labels don't concern me. Well, they should concern you. Because, see, if someone says they're an atheist, there's a whole definition that goes along with it. Now, I would say, and now let me ask everyone here, the one said that he believes that God can exist, the Christian God. I asked him the Christian God. And so what would you guys say the one is, if he is claiming that the Christian God can exist? Yet he rejects the Christian God. Yeah, he's an agnostic. So here's what's really tough about agnosticism, and I haven't done the 15 questions yet. We'll do that. How could someone ever prove that agnosticism is accurate and correct? Because an agnostic, if I could just show you something, let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, let's say the left side represents God existing, and then the right side represents that God doesn't exist, with the D, doesn't exist, and E, God exists. Where the agnostic sits is right here, and they're like one foot's on one side, one's on the other. So we know that they can't be right in reality because either God exists or he doesn't exist. So all we know from someone saying they're agnostic is they suspend really any opinion on it one way or the other. Okay, so let's get started. And you guys ready? Oh, I almost forgot the most important question. The one, would you agree with me that if you have two people, right, and one of them says it's possible for the Christian God to exist, and one of them says it's impossible, are they agreeing with each other or are they contradicting each other? What do you guys say? If one person says it's possible for God to exist and the other says it's impossible for God to exist, are they agreeing with each other or are they contradicting? This is a very easy question. Right. So they're contradicting each other, aren't they? They're not agreeing. So here's the question, the one, and then I'll let you get on the mic and answer it. Let's say we had 666 atheists, because we both met atheists that claim it's possible for God to exist. We both meet atheists that say it's impossible. And there's also agnostics that say it's possible for God to exist. But you got 666 atheists, and 333 of them say, yes, it is possible, and 333 say it's impossible. Since you just admitted that they're not agreeing with each other, they're actually disagreeing with each other, and it's actually contradictory. It can't be possible and impossible for God to exist at the same time, because in reality he either exists or he doesn't. So here's the question. Without evading, in your opinion, who do you think, and I'll get off the mic and I'll let you answer, in your opinion, since you and I agree that they're contradicting each other, which group is right? the 333 saying it's possible for God to exist, or the 333 saying it's impossible. And not just which group is right. Tell us in your opinion why you think they're right and why the other ones are wrong. Go ahead, man.
Well, I actually think that's a pretty interesting question. I haven't heard much from the strong atheist perspective, actually. There's a book, I think, called The Impossibility of God. It's as big as a textbook, I think. I haven't read it because the subject matter is much too complex for me. But as far as my limited knowledge on the matter works, I wouldn't say that strong atheism, as in the I know that God doesn't exist, would be the most intellectually proper response. So in direct response to your question, I'd have to say it's the 330. I like the 666, by the way. That was clever what you did there. But I think the possible group will be right, because I don't think there's a definitive way that you can disprove anything unless its characteristics are contradictory, which I don't think, unlike some atheists, I don't think that applies to the Christian God. I don't believe his characteristics are contradictory. Well, yeah, Neff, that's fine. I was just using it how, if you want to define it, that's fine. I was just using it in the way that some people define it. Do you want to get back on the mic?
Yes, and now the one, you and I, we don't know each other, right? We've never met. We didn't set this up, right? So I want you guys to know this is a person that's in our chat room, and he said that the Christian God, he doesn't believe the Christian God is contradictory. But, I want to come around your side and admit something. When I was an atheist, clearly there were other gods that were contradictory, namely some of the pagan gods or Zeus. And so I agree with you. I thought that was very well said, my friend, that's one of the problems I had with the Christian God, is he was not contradictory to the actual world, that we live in. So that was great. I think you said that epically perfect. So let's get started. And what we're going to do is, here's what we want to do, guys. I got 15 questions here, so we're going to go through them. If you want to stop me on one of them, feel free, my friend, and stop me on it, and then we can talk about it. If it's starting to take too much time, where we're spending a lot on the pages, then what I'll do is I'll go all the way to the end of the page, and then we'll go back to it. But let's see. Let's try it where you can kind of stop me as we go if you feel so, okay? We'll try it like that. Okay, are you guys all on the opening page that says, and by the way, we are recording for the YouTube channel. We are recording this for the YouTube channel. So are you on the page are everyone on the page that says 15 questions for evolutionists? And it says creation.com. We all there? Okay. What we're going to do, guys, is as I go through this, I'm going to show you that there's no possible way macroevolution can be true. Now, there's microevolution, which is change within limits, how we have different types of horses, different types of dogs, different types of cats. But we've never seen a dog or a cat, evolve and transition into something else. And we have no fossil evidence that this is occurring. All we see is minor changes, change within limits. This is what's called creation. This is just God's creation. Another name for it is microevolution, change within limits. What we don't see, however, is macroevolution, the idea that everything evolved from a common ancestor by purely naturalistic means. So we're going to talk about that as I go through this, because if that were the case, then we should have literally millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of these intermediate forms, and we should have fossil evidence of it. But the fossils are not there showing that. Now, don't get me wrong. We have all types of fossils showing God's creation, change within limits, but we don't have these fossils that prove macroevolution. Okay. Question 1. Evolutionist Professor Paul Davies admitted nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals spontaneously organize themselves into the first living cell. No one knows that. The naturalist evolutionist does not know it. Now, the Christian creationist does know it. We know that God is the creator. We believe in intelligent design. We don't believe like what atheist evolutionists believe in chance of the gaps. We just don't have enough blind faith to be an atheist evolutionist. Look what Andrew Knoll said, and he's a very well-respected professor of biology at Harvard. Listen, guys, he said, quote, "We don't really know how life originated on this planet," unquote. And a minimal cell needs several hundred proteins. Even if every atom in the universe were an experiment, right, with all the correct amino acids present for every possible molecular vibration in the supposed evolutionary age of the universe, do you guys know that not even one average size functional protein would form? So how? How did life with hundreds of proteins originate just by chemistry without intelligent design? Yes, go ahead. So the one is going to comment on this.
Okay, so first of all, I want to comment on your comment about the transitional forms before the slide very quickly. To say that we would have millions of transitional forms is really just ignoring how we know the fossilization process occurs. That would be the same thing as saying, even if evolution didn't happen, even if the macroevolution didn't happen, if what you're saying is correct, we would still expect to have a lot more fossils than we have currently dug up. Fossilization is a rare occurrence whether macroevolution happens or not. Okay, and regarding this, yeah, we don't have any shortage of fossils, but we would have a lot more if fossilization wasn't a rare occurrence. But regarding this question in particular, I am actually going to agree with the scientists on this one. I don't know either. I don't know. Some people in response to this question might be saying, or trying to give some kind of super complicated explanation of the abiogenesis process. But I'm going to agree with you guys here. Abiogenesis is not, under any circumstances, proven at this point. It doesn't have nearly enough evidence to be taken at face value. However, I don't think that just because abiogenesis doesn't have enough evidence for it, that we should automatically assume that there is a creator involved. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a creator involved. Maybe, okay, food for thought. Yeah, it brings into the question, how did life arise? Okay, maybe it could have been anything. How did life arise? I don't know. Maybe God did it. Okay. I know that contradicts my atheist perspective. I realize that. But maybe some kind of God did create the first spark of life. That has nothing to do with evolution. It really doesn't, because evolution doesn't concern itself with abiogenesis. So saying that a God created the first spark of life does absolutely nothing to evolution, because evolution and abiogenesis are different subjects. Yeah, Shock, you can go on.
The next time you get on, what you do is on the left of the Talk Now button, you see the little mic slider. The next time you get on, slide it just a little bit to the left. Okay? Slide it just a little bit to the left. So here's a big gap in the evolutionist atheist theory, and I do appreciate you admitting that you don't know. Now, this is one thing that I like about being a Christian creationist, is I can look to science, I can look to history, I can look to experiential reality. I don't have to just be in a religion of scientism. You know, I can use science, I could use other things also. So um, I do appreciate you admitting that you don't know. So let's move to the next one. This is very interesting. How did the DNA code originate? The code is a sophisticated language system with letters and words where the meaning of the words is unrelated to the chemical properties of the letters. Just as the information on this page is not a product of the chemical properties of the ink, if you're looking at paper, or the pixels on a screen. For example, you see the words question 2, how did the DNA code originate? That has really nothing to do with like the glass on your PC monitor. We're all seeing it. That's information there. Those letters are information that I put there, you see. It's not a product of the computer monitor. Now here's another problem too, and I'm telling you guys, evolution is dead in the water. It is destroyed. It's over. Macroevolution, Darwinian evolution, it's over, guys, and here's why. Check this out. Do you know that when they... Oh, hey, Neff, when I'm done, would you talk a little bit about the complexity of the cell and stuff on this, you know, if you want to? But I wanted to say something. Yeah, notice Neff saying in 50 years there'll probably be no talk of evolution in schools. Here's the problem. You know Huxley, which was known as Darwin's bulldog? He thought these guys rode around in horse and buggies in those days. They didn't even know what was in the cell. They thought it was like a blob of goo. This is how stupid they were. You guys in this room, and you two, the one, and you and I know more about the cell than they knew. Man, this is the year 2012, guys. It's time to leave this old-fashioned, outdated, horse and buggy, pseudoscience, fake crud behind. Let's drive a wooden stake through it and kill it. Let's do it. It's time that we put it out of its misery. But no, the atheist evolutionists are carrying the dead corpse of evolution around like the movie Weekend at Bernie's, pretending it's alive. But listen, no matter how much you prop it up, it's dead. DNA also is the final nail in its coffin. Check this out. Even if you believe in the Big Bang, which I don't believe the Earth is 4.54 billion years old, but most atheists believe that. Let's say you go with that you believe the Earth is 4.54 billion years old, right? Well, guess what? They've looked at the complexity of the cell and everything that needs to go on in order for human evolution to be true by purely naturalistic means, and you know what? They said it would take longer than 4.54 billion years. It's over, guys. Evolution's dead. The extreme complexity, there wouldn't be enough time. It just wouldn't. There's a book out, I'm going by memory, okay? It's called, I believe, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle by Barrow and Tipler. And they said there's 10 things that would have to occur within human evolution, at least 10 things, like the development of aerobic respiration, the development of our inner skeletons, you know, all these things. They said each of which is so improbable and it's so complex, and also our cells and stuff, that before it could happen, the sun would have already ceased to be a main sequence star and would have incinerated the Earth. It's just, Darwinian explanation does not solve the problem of DNA. Neff just did a very good video. You guys should go to his channel, and he did a very good video where Stephen Myers was talking about the DNA enigma. DNA is information, and as one body passes on, you know how they'll say, oh, you have your parents' DNA? But it's information. Something put that information there. Some intelligent force put that information there, and it's known as the DNA enigma. It did not evolve by natural processes. Neff, did you want to talk a little bit about the cell and how? Yeah, and talk as much as you want on this, and then I want you guys to listen to this. This is why I am extremely confident as a Christian creationist. Science is on our side. It's not on the atheist naturalist side. With the electron microscope and what we know about the cell and DNA, guys, listen, it's over. It's time for the evolutionists to get rid of the rotting corpse of evolution. Let's drive a wooden stake through it. It's over, guys. The refrigerator lights off, the Jello's jiggling, and the milk's getting cold. It's over. Okay, all right, go ahead, Neff. So I want you guys to listen to this.
Can you hear me? You guys hearing me all right? Just making sure. Anybody say? They hear me? Okay. Tim just said something about eukaryotic cells. Sorry, Tim, but your idea is false. Alan H. Lipton, University of Bristol bacteriologist, stated, and I quote him, "But throughout 150 years of the science of bacteriology, there is no evidence that one species of bacteria has changed into another. Since there is no evidence for species changes between the simplest forms of unicellular life, it is not surprising that there is no evidence for the evolution from prokaryotic to eukaryotic cells, let alone through the whole array of higher multicellular organisms." That's Alan H. Lipton, University of Bristol bacteriologist. So when you say that evolution happened from prokaryotic cells to eukaryotic cells, you're talking about your imagination, not anything scientific. That's just imagination. I'll read something to you that I've written from my own files about this claim of abiogenesis, and then I'll move on. The claim of abiogenesis is not evolution, is a form of denialism propagated by layperson evolutionists, not scientist evolutionists, but by layperson evolutionists, because it is obvious that the impossibility of this imagined abiogenesis process is just impossible. Virtually all papers and books by evolutionist scientists which discuss abiogenesis or the origin of life describe it as the evolution of the first cell, or evolution of DNA, or chemical evolution, etc. All of these describe their imaginative scenarios by which natural selection at the molecular level, which is also a false idea, produced components of the first cell and in DNA. But the reason evolutionists argue, layperson evolutionists make this argument that abiogenesis is not evolution, is because they want to silence creationists by talking about it. They don't like creationists bringing up abiogenesis because it's very uncomfortable for them, because it's quite obvious to anybody that this idea that a cell, as mind-numbingly complex as it is, as we have discovered, arose because molecules can bump into each other is just lunacy. And so, because they don't want to seem like lunatics, they try to make you silence. Stop talking about abiogenesis. And that is why they claim, falsely, that abiogenesis is not an evolutionary process. Well, of course it is. It would have been, had it been true, the evolution of rock minerals from rocks, rock poop I like to call it, evolving into a life form of stupefying complexity. But it just can't have happened, that's all. In Darwin's day, it was believed that a cell was a membrane filled with plasma, and almost nothing, actually nothing, was known of its internal functions. They imagined, and even Darwin imagined, that there was something complex going on in there, but they just had no way of knowing what. Today we know that a cell is the most complex thing imaginable. It is, if you could enlarge a cell to the size of several football fields and walk around inside it, you would discover a city of unimaginable complexity where machinery is following instructions. You would literally go away from that a changed person. That's how complex what you see is. In fact, you'd need to magnify it the size of New York City to really get a very good look at it. Because at the size of New York City, squeezed down to a cell size, a cell is more complex, and that includes New York City streets, buildings, doves, vehicles, bicycles, the trash on the street, the buildings, the rooms, the telephones on the wall, everything in New York City. If you squeeze New York City down to the size of a cell, the cell is more complex. That's astonishing. There's many reasons abiogenesis cannot be true. I really won't. What I'll talk to you about, though, is a little bit about the complexity of the cell. What we've learned just in the last 15 years about the complexity of the cell is mind-boggling. It is orders of magnitude more complex than we thought it was just 10 years ago. 10 years ago. For example, in an article, Erica Hayden, reporting for Nature, stated that regarding the p53 protein interactions discovered by the Human Genome Project, that it is, quote, infinitely more complex than expected. Also, that researchers now know that p53 binds to thousands of sites in DNA, and some of these sites are thousands of base pairs apart, away from any genes, known genes. It influences cell growth, death, structure, and DNA repair as well. So it binds to numerous proteins. It can modify a cell's protein's activity. It's a protein modifier. And so what they've discovered is these two projects, the Human Genome Project and the ENCODE Project, they have spawned further research that has demonstrated all kinds of complexity about the cell that we didn't even know existed. For example, what happened was when they were conducting this research, they attempted to map all the various interactions of the p53 protein in the cell. In other words, make little bubbles. It was like a flow chart they were trying to create. They draw a bubble over here and say p53 interacts with this protein in this way, and then they draw a line here and they say, well, it interacts with this one in this way, interacts with this in this way, interacts with the DNA in this way, this one. It got so complex that they gave up. They said, forget it. We'll never do this. It's not possible. We can't map even one protein in the human cell. It's too complex. Its interactions are too many. And they were only talking about one, the p53. There are an estimated 200,000 proteins in a human cell. And they couldn't map even one. They threw their hands up and said, forget it. It's infinitely complex. There's no way for us to map all the interactions of even one, much less 200,000 proteins. Cells are a complexity of an astonishing order. What we've learned about microbiology since the days of Charles Darwin is just astonishing. You know, it would be possible for somebody to believe that abiogenesis or evolution were possible in the day of Charles Darwin, when man knew so little, virtually nothing about biology. In fact, almost nothing. But since then, all of the knowledge of mankind about biology has come since the day of Charles Darwin. See, in Charles Darwin's day, they didn't know squat about microbiology, almost absolutely nothing. Virtually everything we know about biology has come about since the days of Charles Darwin. You might be interested to know that recently evolutionist scientists are acknowledging that Darwinian evolution is false. You know, Darwin claimed that repeated use of a feature caused it to evolve, like fish fins evolved into legs because they flopped around on the edge of a pond or a dying lake. See? And this is how evolutionists claimed life evolved from one kind into another. They did for 50 years, until DNA was discovered in 1867, and then studied more, and by the early 20th century, this was the prevailing theory in evolution, okay, until genetics took over, and evolutionists said, well, if evolution were true, it had to have been, genetics has to be the mechanism for it. So then they had to incorporate this false idea of random mutation being the mechanism. But you'll find today that evolutionists are coughing up the idea that Darwinian evolution is true. And they put it forth as this lie for so long. For example, from Biology, the California edition by Kenneth Miller and Joseph Levine, both are university professors, both are ardent evolutionists. They state in their new book for high school students, the biology books are getting better at showing what Darwin was, his limited circumstances and understanding. The book points out that Lamarck was wrong. The book also states that Darwin was influenced by the thinking of these people. The book also points out that limbs and organs do not appear or disappear just because an organism does not need them or wants them to appear. The text mentions inheritance and traits. I'm noticing that biology is centered more around cells, DNA, and the complexity of it all. Information moves so fast these days. It is refreshing that stuff like Haeckel's embryos and teaching children that they have leftover tails and telling them their appendix does not have function is long gone out of textbooks and is in the past as another one of those scientific embarrassments. Now this is from Kenneth Miller and Joseph Levine themselves, both ardent evolutionists. So, anyway, now a lot could be said about DNA. DNA verifies the existence of an intelligent designer and special creation, as a matter of fact. And the reason for that is because the genetic material possesses coded information. And code cannot be produced by nature. Information cannot be produced by nature. And DNA's coded information possesses punctuation, syntax, and grammar. Those are human language properties. It also possesses algorithmic information search and replace processes. Those also required. It's a choice to be made based upon a comparison of information. This requires a mind. See, so nature cannot be the origin of DNA, therefore it cannot be the origin of life. Because information is immaterial, massless, intangible, an abstract construct of mind, and so are language properties, and so are algorithms and linguistics law, and DNA possesses all of these. It is not possible that nature is the producer of DNA. It had to have been a product of a mind. Now, since the material is only, the molecule is merely the medium to convey the information, and the information is not bound to its medium, therefore the medium was created afterward, after the information, as a medium to convey the information. Just like a book is created, is printed to convey the information from the author. The information comes first always, the book is second. Same is true of DNA. The genetic information was designed by our intelligent designer, and the molecule was created by our special creator as a medium to convey that genetic information. And this is empirical evidence which proves that all life was intelligently designed and specially created. Science has verified what atheists claim, what is the biggest scientific fear of atheists. Science has verified we have a designer who created us. Genetics has proven it. Get off the mic now, Sean, let you have it for a little while. I mean, I could sit here and talk about this for 3 hours, you know? But I mean, this is your show, so I'm going to get off. But if you want me to expound about any other topic a little bit, I'll be happy to, because I love talking about this stuff. I could carry on for hours about it.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I was gonna. I sent you a message. I said, hang on to it because like we got 15 pages and what you're talking about is going to be coming on the next page too. So yeah, dead around because the one I wanted the one is in the room. Want to ask him something, and what I think I'm going to do, guys, is this: is after the one talks about this, let me go all the way through all the
Sean,
15 pages. Okay.
I'll say one more thing before I get off. Then I'll say. Would you believe that a computer, if you found a computer sitting on the dirt somewhere in the wild, would you believe that it could have created itself? Well, why would you believe a cell could have created itself from the raw materials of the earth? Because a cell is vastly more complex than a personal computer. Circuits and circuit board and micro machinery and everything, vastly more complex. So why is it reasonable to believe that a PC can't have created itself? But a cell could have? My goodness. Do you realize how much more complex a cell is than a computer? No, but it's the analogy. Right. So why is it biological make it any different? Right? How does the fact that a cell is biological make any difference? If it's irrational that a computer could assemble itself, it came from the materials in the earth. Right. The ability to replicate is an example of life, not non-life. Life, not non-life. See, evolutionists believe that rock poop assembled itself into a cell. So what are you saying? You think that could have happened, but you don't think that a PC could come out of the earth? Why not? Wouldn't it be more reasonable if you're an evolutionist to believe that a PC could form out of the dirt of the earth than a cell? Well, it sure would, seeing how a cell is vastly more complex than a PC. Okay, I'm getting off the mic now. Shock, you've got it, man.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? Testing, testing. You guys hear me? Okay. Okay, now here's what I wanted to say for the one. Here's the question. Look at the question. What other coding system has existed without intelligent design? And the one, I was wondering if you could talk about that. Give us another coding system that has... Oh.
Trying to get to you. I was just pointing out, I don't know if you heard that, Sean. Evolutionists believe abiogenesis is true, right? So, and the cell is vastly more complex than a computer. And a cell is made from the materials of the earth. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Shock. Apparently I can't hear Shock for some reason. Something's wrong, so I'm going to log out and log back in. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was my fault, because when I sent Neff the message, it locks out his audio. So let me see if Neff can. Neff, let me know when you can hear me. Oh, okay, good. You fixed it? Okay, good. That was my fault, Neff. It's not your fault. I sent you the private message, and I guess it's like it silences it. I know I had that happen to me too, so I apologize. That was my fault. It wasn't Neff's at all. So here's the question, and now here's what I was wondering you can do. If you could just spend a few moments on this page, and then let me fly through all the 15 pages, and then I promise, ma'am, we'll go right back to question 3, 4, like that, okay? So what I'm going to do now, because we'll get bogged down talking for hours on like one page. Oh, hey, Josh. So here's what we're asking is, what other coding system has existed without intelligent design? And how did the DNA code originate? So go ahead, the one.
Hey, Shock. Okay, I will answer that. I'm not trying to avoid the question. But to answer that, I do need to explain something about the DNA code. The DNA code is something that originated when scientists assigned letters to stand in for proteins in the chain. The actual DNA code has no letters we can see. It's a human concept that we gave to it, so we could classify it better. For an analogy for that, oh, sorry, you told me to slide down my mic a little bit. Let me do that real quick. For an analogy of that, you would want to look at the layers of rock we have and the fossils inside of them, and look at what information we can get out of them. We can go to a certain depth in the rocks and see when the fossil was dated. And I want to comment on something Neff said real quick, because I really don't think he's giving his his creator very much credit, because he mentioned that if you see a computer, you assume it has a designer. Well, I find that kind of odd, Neff, because wouldn't you agree that a computer is being made from a designer from pre-existing parts? You wouldn't say your God made things out of pre-existing parts, so it seems like you're kind of downplaying him, aren't you? And another thing I want to say is that you keep trying to assert that abiogenesis is concerned with evolution. Well, I'm sorry, that's wrong. That's not the definition of evolution. Evolution is the change in allele frequencies over time. I don't know how you could get something like abiogenesis out of that. And this isn't a definition that scientists came up with after creationists started challenging them. Okay, evolution of the cell is different than than evolution of life. They're two different concepts. But again, this isn't and the change in allele frequency isn't some arbitrary definition scientists came over after creationists started challenging them. It's the definition that has been consistent. I don't know how you're saying change in allele frequency is opposite to evolution. Yeah, I answered your question. A direct analogy would be to look at the layers of rock. Okay, now I'm saying directly the layers of rock. The layers of rock and the fossils that are within them. Sure.
Let me just tell you this one thing. Yeah, abiogenesis is evolution. It's an evolutionary process, whether you want to accept that or not. Changes to allelic frequency is not evolution. I know of at least 11 different definitions of evolution the evolutionists use. They pick the one that they want to use depending on the conversation that's being had, because it seems to be the one that's the least challenged. That's how they work. Changes to allele frequency is the varying expression of different genes in subsequent populations, and causes some genes to become dominant and others to become recessive. Over time, this makes genes permanently turned on and some permanently turned off. If the genes has information that would benefit the organism should their environment change or they move into a new environment and it can't be expressed anymore, they're at a disadvantage, because now that genetic information is completely turned off, will not be expressed anymore in subsequent generations, and the organism is at a disadvantage permanently. So changes to allelic frequency is the same thing as genetic drift, except on a larger scale. It causes the variance of all copies of a gene to be either expressed or not expressed. Changes to allelic frequency reduces the genetic variability of things over time, and can lead to it can be detrimental to reproductive success. For example, if you take chance populations breeding in a population of let's say white and brown moths, and because of changes to allele frequency selects one more than the other, you'll end up with a population that's mostly brown, for example. Okay. Now, first off, this won't change the organism structurally designed one bit, because you have to have new genetic information for that. The genes possess the information they do. Changing the frequency of them can't cause them to any genetic information that doesn't exist to be expressed. Therefore, it can't cause morphological change, because the information in the genome defines that organism. If the information for the new feature isn't there, it can't ever appear. Changing allele frequencies will not cause new genetic information to arise. It cannot produce evolutionary change. It is not a mechanism for evolution. It only causes a loss of fitness and eventually a permanent loss of genetic information in a species. It is why ring species exist, because their changes to their allele frequencies have happened too much, and now they can't reproduce with the parent population. Some of these creatures that are called ring species can actually reproduce, in contradiction to what atheists claim. But if they can't, it's because their allele frequencies have changed, and their information is no longer compatible. That doesn't mean they've changed structurally in their design one iota, however. They're still the same creatures with variations to color, size, shape, and pattern. These are not morphological. Evolution requires morphological change, not cosmetic change. Cosmetic change will never turn an amphibian tetrapod into a fish into an amphibian tetrapod. You can't get fish to evolve into an amphibian by changing its color, size, shape, or pattern any number of times. Not trillions times trillions. You've got to have new structures that don't exist in the animal and lose some that exist in fish. See? So anyway, changes to allele frequency is the opposite of evolution. For example, if you got this increased population of brown moths in chance reproduction, what happens if the frequency, the organism needs to be white instead of brown again? Because this would make them easier to better able to survive. But the genes that produce the brown color in the thing are permanently turned off because they've been made so dormant over so many generations that they just no longer, they're ignored by the genetic code, by the information processing. Well, then they can't ever become white again, brown, see? And that's a disadvantage. Now, when you apply this same concept to all the functions and features of an organism, you'll see that changing allele frequency only makes organisms weaker, reduces their genetic variability, and it causes everything that lives on this earth to move towards extinction slowly. Everything that lives on the earth is moving towards extinction for two reasons. One, because of the accruing effect of random genetic mutation, the destruction of the genetic information, and two, continuous changes to allele frequency, which get certain genes turned off permanently in an organism eventually, and means it can't be turned on again. That's what happens when you get a Chihuahua when you breed dogs. So you can't reverse engineer a Great Dane from a Chihuahua, or the original dog kind, rather. You can't do it, because the genetic information has been turned off permanently. That's how you get Chihuahuas, by turning genes off over and over and over and over again with breeding. See? You turn off that feature. I don't want that feature. That's a big dog feature. We don't big dogs. We want little bitty dogs. We turn off the genes that say make a big dog. We do this over and over until eventually the genetics gets it. Okay, you don't want any big dogs. We'll turn the genes off and they'll stay off. That's a change of allele frequency. It's unreversible in most cases. The cecal valves in the Podmacaru and Podcapistae lizard is an example where it didn't make a permanent change difference, and the genes could be expressed that produce the cecal valves once again. But this is we're only talking about 36 years. What about 36 generations? 3,600 years? That might be a very different thing. Or even 360 years might be a very different thing. But in 36 years, the information could still be expressed. If those creatures had continued to exist for many, many more generations, chances are, because those genes were not expressed, they would be marked as to be ignored permanently by the genetic processes and never expressed again. And therefore, they could never have expressed the cecal valve genes. See? Anyway, I'll get off. Changes to allele frequency is the opposite of evolution. It's devolution. It moves creatures towards extinction. It is certainly not a mechanism for evolution. There is no such thing as a mechanism for evolution. Science, thanks to genetics, has killed evolution.
Okay, hold on, my mute was on. Okay, guys, it's obvious we have a very good conversation going here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way to the 15 questions without stopping, and then we'll go back so you guys can take your time. But I want it to be known. Remember, I asked that guy, the one. I said, what other coding system has existed without intelligent design? And he talked about a rock. Well, I can put a rock on my desk, and it'll just sit there. It's not going to go code anything. So that was an epic fail. Rocks are not a coding system that has existed without intelligent design. Yeah, that's not a a coding system that exists with Intel. That was really an epic fail. Let's move on. Now here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go all the way to question 15, and then we're going to come back to question 3, and then we'll open it up again, okay? So let me just stay on the mic all the way to question 15 and read it, because otherwise we won't be done even tonight if I don't do it that way. So remember, we're going to go back to question 3 after I'm done. So let me go question 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 15 questions. We're on number 3. How could mutations, which are accidental copying mistakes, create huge volumes of information in the DNA of living things? And Neff, I know you want to talk about this, so we'll come back to this one too, and then we'll start there. But let me fly through it. How could such errors create 3 billion letters of DNA information to change a microbe into a microbiologist, which is why the one's rock analogy of DNA was an epic fail? There is information for how to make proteins and also for controlling their use. Much like a cookbook contains the ingredients as well as the instructions for how and when to use them. One without the other is useless. Mutations are known for their destructive effects, including over 1,000 human diseases such as hemophilia. Rarely are they even helpful. But how can scrambling existing DNA information create a new biochemical pathway or nanomachines with many components to make goo-to-you evolution possible? And how did a 32-component rotary motor like ATP synthase, which produces the energy currency ATP for all life, or robots like kinesin, which is like a postman delivering parcels inside cells, how did they originate? Guys, no rational human being would say this was all due to natural processes and just dumb luck and chance. It is irrational for a human being to think that. You got this 32-component rotary motor like ATP synthase, just the extreme complexity, and that's what Neff was talking about with the computer. If you see the computer, you know it's designed. Richard Dawkins even admits that these things do look like they're designed. So let's go to the next page. Question 4, why is natural selection a principle recognized by creationists taught as evolution? Natural selection is not a creative process, but evolutionists try to dishonestly make it seem that way. It's a selective process. In other words, it might explain the survival of the fittest. For example, why certain genes benefit creatures more in certain environments, and Neff was just talking about that, but not the arrival of the fittest, where the genes and creatures came from in the first place. The death of individuals not adapted to an environment and the survival of those that are suited does not explain the origin of the traits that make an organism adapted to an environment. And Neff was talking about the finches earlier, I believe. So we'll get back to that one too. So we're going to go all the way through this, and we'll go back to question 3. How did new biochemical pathways? This is another problem for evolutionists. They want you to believe it's all due just to dumb luck and chance. How did new biochemical pathways, which involve multiple enzymes working together in sequence, originate? They have to work together in sequence, guys. Every pathway and nanomachine requires multiple protein enzyme components to work. Here it is, the atheist evolutionist chance of the gaps. How did lucky accidents create even one of the components, let alone 10 or 20 or 30 plus at the same time? Often in a necessary program sequence. Evolutionists, it's over. It's over. Evolution's dying. This is modern science, guys, the year 2012. It's time to leave Darwin's horse and buggy days behind. As you know, Darwin thought the cell was just a glob of goo. Everyone in here, all 20 of us in here, we know more about the cell than they knew. It's time we drive a wooden stake through the fictional theory of evolution. Look, evolutionary biochemist Franklin Harold wrote, listen closely, guys, we must concede. What does that mean? That means they're admitting that evolution's failing. Look, we must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of what? Look, of any biochemical or cellular system. Only a variety of wishful speculations. We must concede, look, that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any, not even one, guys, of any biochemical or cellular system, only a variety of wishful speculations. Question 6, living things look like they were designed. How do evolutionists know that they were not designed? Richard Dawkins wrote, biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed with the purpose. Now, can I read something to you guys? And you tell me what's the key phrase in this sentence. Okay, get ready to type it in. We'll play a game. What's the key phrase in this sentence? Biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed with the purpose. What's the important phrase there? You notice he says that have the appearance of having been designed with the purpose. What do they have? The appearance of having been designed with the purpose. Appearance and designed. Francis Crick, you know, Francis Crick looked at the complexity of the double helix structure of DNA, and you know what he said, guys? Listen to what Crick said. He said that he posited that this evolutionary theory is he just can't see it happening naturally here on Earth. He believes it was seeded from somewhere else, like, you know, meteorites or something like that. Because of the complexity of it, even if you believe in Big Bang age of the Earth, you know, 4.54, it's still not enough time for all the complexity for it to happen. It's over, evolutionists. He said that it's almost a miracle. And so, since we know that evolution's either true or it's not true, and I believe it's not true, but if it's not true, then God exists, and if it's not true, it's a miracle, and therefore more evidence for the existence of God. So either way, the evolutionists lose. He says biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved. Why? Why must they do that? Philip Johnson, he wrote a book called Darwin on Trial. He said the problem is, and like I was talking to the one in here, he said he's like an atheist. Well, I rest my case. When they're an atheist, they have a presuppositional, biased, and even bigoted approach to science. They approach it with a naturalist worldview. So no matter what they see, they're always going to have this bigoted, prejudiced, naturalist worldview. If it's not a naturalist view, they won't accept it. But what they really should do, what the best scientists of history have done, is without fear, they just go where science leads them. And you guys know that the majority of the best scientists throughout history did believe in God. The majority of them. Not many were atheists. That by far the majority of them were good God-believing folks. Look at the problem for evolutionists is that living things show too much design. Who objects when an archaeologist says that pottery points to human design? Yet if someone attributes the design in living things to a designer, that is not acceptable? Why wouldn't it be acceptable? If you're a true free thinker and you go where the evidence is and you're not bigoted or prejudiced towards design, obviously design is more plausible. I was just listening to a debate where Dr. William Lane Craig said, you know, macroevolution has not been proven, and in fact, he said, he pointed out many different studies where they said it's just not plausible, and he was debating Austin Dacey, and Austin Dacey conceded that evolution doesn't seem like it's plausible. He conceded that in the debate, and he's an evolutionist himself. He was not able to provide any proof and evidence that macroevolution was true. Why should science be restricted to naturalistic causes rather than logical causes? Okay, I want to go all the way to 15. How did multicellular life originate? How did cells adapted to individual survival? How did they learn to cooperate and specialize? How did they learn this? And to create complex plants and animals. We're almost there, guys. How did sex originate? Here's the problem. Asexual reproduction gives up to twice as much reproductive success, fitness. In other words, it has more success to it, right? For the same resources as sexual production. So what they can't figure out is how could the latter even gain enough advantage to be selected? How could mere physics and chemistry invent the complementary apparatuses needed at the same time? Non-intelligent processes cannot plan for future coordination of male and female organs. Once again, the atheist evolutionist wants us to believe, gee, we got lucky, it's just dumb luck and chance. Guys, I don't have enough faith, enough blind faith to be an atheist evolutionist. This is why the majority of people do leave atheism, and this is why I believe atheism is now shrinking worldwide from the year 2008 to the year 2012. Why are the expected countless millions of transitional fossils missing? This is another problem for evolutionists. They're constantly propping up that dead, weakened Bernie's corpse, and it's over, evolutionists. It's over. Everyone knows it. We got 21 people in here. We all know that evolution's dead. It's gone extinct. Look, Darwin noted the problem, and it still remains. The evolutionary family trees in textbooks are based on imagination, not fossil evidence. For example, the one I would like you to type in a number or an approximate number of the amount of transitional fossils we have. Do it right now, please. And I want everyone to look at, he's not going to type a number. The reason is because we don't have any. Look what Stephen Jay Gould wrote, and I'm still looking, I don't see any numbers being typed in. He says the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. Guys, there's a lack of evidence here, and we're still waiting for the one to give us a number. Notice he's not typing a number. He says there's no recorded record of the number. Well, just give me an approximate. Give me a number. Just type in any number, approximate. So while you're busy doing that, my friend, you're not gonna have it. You see, here's the problem. Do you know that they found well over time over 1 billion fossils? They show microevolution, which all that is change within limits. What we don't have is transitional fossils. Let me just say something right here. If a bat and a whale are both vertebrates and mammals, right? Think of all the fossils, the transitional fossils, the intermediates that we should have for them to share common ancestry. If a bat and a whale evolved from a common ancestor. And there's evolutionists that say that. They go, well, they're both mammals and vertebrates, so think of all of them we should have. And if macroevolution was true, if Darwinian evolution was true, we should literally have, with all the species of animals, we should have millions upon millions upon millions of millions, and that's a conservative number. We don't even have one. We don't even have one. It's over. Lack of evidence is not evidence. There's the same amount of evidence for macroevolution being true as there is atheism being true. And isn't it curious that the one is an atheist, and every single person in this room that buys into macroevolution is an atheist? Isn't that interesting? I rest my case. All right, I will. I'll do it. I'll do it, Neff. I'll do it on my on the 15 when I'm on the 15 page, man. No problem. Neff, another thing you can do if you go to my name in the room to the left and like click the American flag, and then all the way to the left it'll say send me a private message, and you could click that also. So this is a major problem. This right, I'm sorry, the previous one. Well, this is a problem too. This right here is a major problem. This is why so many people are saying, you know what, it can't be true. Do you know they've actually asked people if you believe in macroevolution. The majority of people in the US, they reject it because of lack of evidence. Oh, cool. Hey, thanks, Neff. I appreciate that. Yeah, check this out. Here's another problem that evolutionists admit. And Gould is an evolutionist. He says the maintenance of stability within species must be considered as not a minor evolutionary problem, a major evolutionary problem. For those of you guys that are evolutionists in here, listen, you're going to be on the wrong side of modern science. I think it's already happening. I think the Christian theist is clearly on the right side of modern science. You know, the science is in our favor. How do living fossils remain unchanged over suppose hundreds of millions of years if evolution has changed worms into humans at the same time frame? We have living fossils and they're not changing. If everything evolved and atheists want us to believe the lie that we invented God, then what purpose or meaning is there to human life? Do you know that Richard Dawkins says there's no meaning or purpose to this life? How did blind chemistry create mind? For example, every single one of you guys in here, you had the free will and choice to come in here and to log into this room. You have a mind. So I want to go through something with you guys, and I want to show you something. Everyone right now, think of a giant red elephant. Think of a giant red elephant, right? And if I were to ask you, did you think of it? Did you create that red elephant in your mind? You would say, yeah, I created it. Well, you didn't do it with then where is the red elephant? You didn't create it with naturally. It's not a natural process. Your mind did it. You can use your mind. You can create these things within your mind. If they did an autopsy on you and they cut you open and they looked in your brain, they wouldn't see the red elephant there. Yet, where is it? See, how did blind chemistry create mind, intelligence, meaning, altruism, and morality? If everything evolved and we invented God, then what purpose or meaning is there to human life? This is why atheists, which tend to be evolutionists, have one of the highest suicide rates in the world. It leads to nihilism. Why is evolutionary just so storytelling tolerated? You know, the evolutionists are extremely religious. The most religious person you'll ever meet in the world is an evolutionist. Boy, are they religious. Evolutionists often use flexible storytelling to explain observations contrary to evolutionary theory. Dr. Philip Scale wrote, Darwinian explanations for such things are often too subtle. Natural selection makes humans self-centered and aggressive. You know, you'll hear them say that. But then in other instances, they'll say, well, it also makes them altruistic and peaceable. Well, which one is it? Or natural selection produces vile men who spread their seed, except when it prefers men who are faithful protectors and providers. When an explanation is so subtle that it can explain any behavior, it's difficult to test it experimentally, much less use it as a catalyst for scientific discovery. Do you guys know that evolution, macroevolution, fails the scientific method? It's basically a faith-based worldview, macroevolution. Where are the scientific breakthroughs to evolution? Dr. Mark Kirshner, we're almost there, guys, 15 questions, around 13. Chair of the Department of Systems Biology, Harvard, said, get this, quote, in fact, over the last 100 years, almost all of biology has proceeded except evolutionary biology itself. Molecular biology, biochemistry, physiology have not taken evolution into account at all. Dr. Skell wrote, it is our knowledge of how these organisms actually operate, not speculations about how they may have arisen millions of years ago. The evolution's really, it's like a theory on history when you really think about it. And it says evolution actually hinders medical discovery. Then why do schools and universities teach evolution so dogmatically, stealing time from experimental biology that would benefit mankind? This is hilarious. Check out what Richard Dawkins said. Now, you guys know Richard Dawkins is an agnostic now. Did you know that? He says he's not sure. He doesn't know if God exists or not. That's the definition of an agnostic. So we're going to call him agnostic Richard Dawkins. He's an agnostic. Listen what Richard Dawkins says. And in question 14 says, science involves experimenting to figure out how things work, how they operate. Why is evolution, a theory about history, taught as if it is the same as this operational science? You cannot do experiments or even observe what happened in the past. It's really a religion, this evolution. Now, let's see if I can do this without laughing. Look what Richard Dawkins said. He said, asked if evolution has been observed, and let me do it in my Richard Dawkins accent. Richard Dawkins said, quote, "Evolution has been observed. It's just that it hasn't been observed while it's happening." You see that? He says we haven't observed it, but we have. That's really what he said. Richard Dawkins should be a politician. Boy, he's good at being kind of squirmy there. He says, evolution has been observed. It's just that it hasn't been observed while it's happening. Oh my gosh! This is why you don't want to let biologists out of the lab too often. I think we need to keep Richard Dawkins in the lab. Don't you guys believe in separation of church and state? If you believe in evolution, then you're basically promoting religion in the classroom. Why is a fundamentally religious idea a dogmatic belief system that fails to explain the evidence taught in science classes? It's a religion, guys. The most religious people I've met are atheist evolutionists. Man, they're dogmatically religious. Karl Popper, famous philosopher of science, said Darwinism is not a testable scientific theory. Listen closely. But a metaphysical religious research program. Michael Ruse, evolutionist science philosopher, admitted evolution is a religion. This was true of evolution in the beginning, he says, and it's true of evolution still today. Now, if you can't teach religion in science classes, why is evolution taught? Now, we asked the one, and now we're going to go back and we'll open up the mic again so you guys can get on. I remember I asked the one about the fossils, and here's the problem. He admits that we really don't, well, he didn't give me a number. How many transitional fossils do we have? We have over 1 billion fossils that we found. We just don't have transitional fossils. How many? We should have millions upon millions upon millions if macroevolution were true and Darwinian evolution were true. We should have it, but we don't have it. Now, can I ask, are there any other evolutionists in here that want to come up with a number for this? How many transitional fossils do we have? Anybody? Now, we got some evolutionists in here, but they're eerily silent on this. They don't want, and we are recording this. We're going to be uploading this to our YouTube channel. The one we're not asking how many fossils we have. We're asking how many fossils do we have that are transitional fossils. Right. Now, I agree with what Fudd said. I totally agree. When you really think about it, what Fudd said makes sense. He said, look, either if macroevolution is true, you didn't say this part, Fudd, but I'm going to say what you said, then everything would be a transitional fossil, right? So he said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fudd, he said either everything's a transitional fossil or nothing's a transitional fossil. Was that pretty accurate, Fudd? I don't want to put words in your mouth, my friend. And I agree with that. If macroevolution is true, okay, he said about right, then we should literally have millions upon millions of fossils as we're seeing these species transition. We're not seeing it, guys. Now, I got to tell you something really funny. I'm not making this up. This is what a evolutionist told me one time. I asked him this question. I said, where are these transitional fossils? We have all types of fossils, but we don't have any showing transition. We should have millions and millions of them. And you know what he said? I'm not making this up. He said, well, there's some creationist scientists, and I heard that they're going around buying up the fossils and they're hiding them from the public. Really? Come on. Guys, look, I'm here to tell you as a creationist, there's none of the creationists are buying up the transitional fossils, hiding them from the public. The reason why we don't have the transitional fossils is because they are not there. Okay, let's go back. Like I said, remember we're going to go back to question 3. Hey, Neff. Neff, can we spend like about 5 minutes on each one, man, and go through all of them? And then if you want to go back and speak again, can we? Can we do it like that? Because the one wants to talk about it. So let's do about 5 minutes on each one at the most, and let's go through all the rest of the pages, and then we'll go back. So okay, the one. Did you want to talk about this page, the mutations, and then Neff, you go after the one, okay? Okay, the one doesn't want to go. Okay, so we'll have Neff go. So here's the question: how could mutations? And Neff's an expert at this. I heard him talk about this. So go ahead, Neff. If you can get on and we've heard evolutionists say, "Oh, it's all mutations," but mutations don't really cause these things here that we're seeing on this page. So listen to this. Go ahead, Neff, and let's spend about 5 minutes on it. If you go a little over, no big deal, but let's keep it like 5 minutes, and then the one you can get on, or you can just say skip it, and we'll go to the next page. So let me get off, and Neff will get on.
Yeah, thanks, Hawk. Genetic mutation is put forth by evolutionists as a mechanism for evolutionary change, but science has demonstrated that random genetic mutation is no such thing. It is not a mechanism for evolutionary change. All it does is corrupt genetic information. Let me point out something about the DNA real quick that we didn't know just 15 years ago. For the longest time, evolutionists believed, even geneticists, secular geneticists, believed that only one strand of the DNA molecule was actually information and that it was read. Today, we know that's not true. The other strand is also information, and it's read in the opposite direction. Now, what this verifies is that the base pairs that create both strands are interdependent information. This is, if you really think about what I just said, it's astonishing. Tell me how random process is going to produce that. Okay, but anyway, random mutation, the accruing effects of random mutation. You can see a video by Cornell University geneticist. Now that's an Ivy League school, by the way. Cornell University geneticist John Sanford. On my YouTube channel, in which he states that it is now believed by geneticists that 100 random mutations accrue in every human being every generation. At this rate, and he quotes a secular geneticist who made this question in his paper. He said, "Why are we not extinct many times over already?" Now, why did he quote this secular geneticist who asked that question in his paper? Why are we not extinct because of random mutations several times over already? Because it is known amongst geneticists and biologists that random mutations is degradatory. They are degradatory to life forms. They cause a corruption of the genetic codes, and they destroy life. They cause entropy to the genetic molecule. The genetic information is experiencing entropy and has been doing it since the flood of Noah. Random mutation is the opposite of evolution. Evolutionists have been claiming that it's a mechanism for evolution for decades and decades, for almost 100 years. But we've been experimenting now with random genetic mutations since the 1920s, about 1927, and the jury is in. All that we have observed about the effects of randomly induced genetic mutations in organisms in laboratories is weakness, deformity, and death. That's all we see. Every morning at 9 o'clock, every morning, every single day, in universities and colleges around this world, random genetic mutations will be performed from sunrise to sunset in thousands, hundreds, if not thousands, of universities all over the world. There have been millions millions and millions of random genetic mutation experiments performed. Many millions since the 1920s. They're conducted at every major university in this world every single day. If you live in the United States, you say, well, I live in Arkansas. The University of Arkansas will be conducting random genetic mutation experiments at 9 o'clock in the morning, I can almost assure you, every single day. University of Southern California, they'll be doing the same thing. Stanford University, the University of Mississippi, the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Texas, Florida, Texas A&M, you name it. You go on down the list. Hundreds and hundreds of universities are conducting random mutation experiments every single day. And all that has ever been observed due to random mutation is weakness, deformity, and death. That's it. You see, random mutation cannot produce information. Information is intangible, massless, immaterial, not bound to its medium. It is not possible. There is no mechanism in nature to produce genetic information. Now, in fact, there is even a process that has recently in scientific circles been labeled as back mutation, which is a sweet little kind of a twisty way to call error correction. You see, for many years, scientists acknowledged that there were what's called error correction processes in the cell. That is, that the DNA is proofread, and if a mistake in the genetic information is discovered, intelligent design, then it is repaired, and then proofreading continues as though it never stopped. This is an amazing thing. Your cell right now, every cell in your body is being, the genetic information is being proofread for errors right now. Every single DNA molecule in your body has a set of machines going up and down it to find the mistakes. And when they find them, they fix them and continue on their way. Now, the problem is that even this repair mechanism itself has suffered random genetic mutation and is no longer perfect. And sometimes a mutation will slip past it, and it accrues in the genetic code. But random genetic mutation has proven to be detrimental to life. It is the opposite of evolution. It causes weakness, deformity, and death. To see a list of the examples of what your friendly neighborhood random genetic mutations can do for you, type in Google, go to Google and type in genetic disorders and see the list of terrible things that random genetic mutations do for you and your loved ones, including Tay-Sachs disease, cancer, many, many other genetic disorders. Look for genetic disorders. Go to Google and type in genetic disorders, and you'll find a huge list of all kinds of wonderful things that random genetic mutation does for you and your loved ones all the time. Making things bigger, smarter, and better. But wait, I mean weaker, smaller, and dumber, and deformed, and incapable, and unfit, and dead. See, that's what mutation does. It destroys genetic information. In 2011, Dr. Grady S. McCurdy declared, quote, "It is commonly held belief of evolutionists that small changes in genetic material, mutations, will ultimately produce the presumed large changes necessary for one biological organism to change into a different kind of biological organism, which is commonly called macroevolution. This belief is not valid. Scientifically, a mutation is a copying error of a previously existing information contained in the DNA. A mutation is a structural change in the hierarchical material which makes the offspring different from their parents." End quote. So you see, even scientists, even secular scientists, discredit genetic mutation as a mechanism for evolution. You will find if you, I challenge you to this. I'm going to get off the mic in just a moment, but I challenge you to this. Do this. If you're on the fence, you want to know the truth, do a Google search for genetic mutations and start reading the abstracts of scientific papers produced by scientists wherein they observe the effects of random mutation and see how much of it they say is negative effect. You will be astonished. Now, what you might also find is that it produced some immunities or something else like that. Well, there's two problems there. First off, we don't know that the change, the mutation simply means change to genetic code. That doesn't mean, just saying mutation doesn't tell you, is it random mutation or is it programmed translational frame shifting? Because there is such thing as a random mutation caused by elements in the environment and in the cell, and there are such things as programmed mutation. That is, programmed code within the DNA causes change to the DNA molecule for a purpose, such as to produce an immunity in response to something a cell has encountered in the environment or an organism. See, that's programmed. That's an example of intelligent design. The code is designed in such a way that if it needs to modify itself to respond to the environment for survivability, it can do so. That's ingenious. 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 Nature is not ingenious. God is ingenious. So what you'll find is, if you read their abstracts, what you'll find is all kinds of negative examples of what random mutation has done. And then, so they're going to say out of one side of their mouth, well, random mutation did this, and we observed that it is degradatory to the such and such, and it changed the such and such of the cell membrane, and such, and the cell was no longer viable, and this wasn't able to interact with the such and such proteins anymore, and was, see, they're talking about negative things. It was degradatory. It hurt the creature, okay? But then out of the other side of their mouth, they're going to say, evolution, mutation. See, this is the non-science, anti-science function of evolutionist scientists. It's anti-science. They know what science has demonstrated about the effects of random mutations to organisms. But then they're going to turn around and say out of the other side of their mouth. And the reason they have to is because if evolution were true, it would have to be that genetic information changes over time, and this is why evolution is true. It has to be, because we've discovered DNA since Darwin. Darwin didn't know beans about DNA. He didn't know it existed. They didn't know it existed in Darwin's day. So the whole concept of evolution from its beginning to the present time is a monkey swinging on some tandem bars, and are trying to avoid the bad spots. That's what evolutionists are trying to do with science. They're trying to manipulate their claims so that they conform continuously to new discoveries in science, because everything we discover in science continuously discredits what they're saying. So they have to constantly modify this evolution theory so that they can try to find loopholes in science to squeeze it in. But they can't let go of the random genetic mutation claim, because we've discovered that genetic information is what determines what an organism is. You are what you are human because the information in your DNA is that of code that defines a human being. The human being has 5 fingers. They get a random mutation that duplicates a 6th one. That's a negative, first off. It's a hindrance to the hand. And secondly, it's the genetic information that defined a finger that got duplicated. See? And the genome of that whole organism is information that defines a human being. See? As opposed to the genetic code of a fish, or a spider, or a mud skipper, or any other creature. See? Genetic code is information that defines an organism. And they know that now. And they can't let go of the random mutation claim, because if they do, they have nothing. But random genetic mutation is entropy to the genetic code, and it's causing everything in this world to move toward extinction. Even if Jesus Christ didn't come back and solve the problem for mankind and for this world relatively soon, all the creatures of this world would become extinct within 10,000 years because of the effects of random mutation. There would be no life on this planet at all.
All right. If you want to get on, just say so, and I'll pop off. Okay. I'm recording this on my external hard drive, and I only have so much space. So I'm trying to go as fast as I can. All right. Question 4. Why is natural selection a principle recognized? Oh, it's okay, Neff. I'm a Christian. I forgive you. No, I know this is going to be a good recording, and by the way, Neff, if you want it, just download it from my channel. It's okay. Natural selection, this is a pretty easy, non-controversial question. Everyone agrees with natural selection, but what we're saying is it's not a creative process. It might explain the survival of the fittest, but not the arrival of the fittest. So how did new biochemical pathways which involve multiple enzymes working together in sequence originate? Let me get to one that's really good here. Well, we talked about that, how Richard Dawkins admits that biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed. Now, here's what's really interesting, and I guess I'll throw in some comedy here. How many of you guys saw the clip of Expelled where Dawkins is talking to Ben Stein? And Dawkins starts saying, he says, well, nobody knows. Nobody knows. And Ben Stein's asking him different questions. What was really weird to me is how Dawkins, he doesn't seem to have a problem with talking about intelligent design. He says, but his thing is he doesn't want to go to God. He goes to ET. Like, he posits alien life. He says that it could be that some other type of life, and then he says that must have came about by purely Darwinian means. So he's not talking about God. He's talking about alien life from another planet could have seeded this planet, right? That's weird to me. It's like Dawkins is literally positing aliens. So Dawkins is not against intelligent design or even positing that it could happen. He's really against God. Because to me, it's more embarrassing to say that E.T., phone home, came here and seeded it than a powerful God. That's just kind of unusual. But how many of you saw that where Ben Stein says, Mr. Dawkins, do you have any idea how life originated on this planet? He goes, well, I don't know, but nobody knows. And then he actually says that it could be that that the Earth got seeded from outer space, that the aliens, I guess he is positing that there could be intelligent life, but he said the way that it could have got seeded is something that evolved from Darwinian means seeded the planet. So that sounds to me like aliens. If they're not from this Earth, he's positing aliens. How did multicellular life originate? We talked about that. How did cells adapted to individual survival learn to cooperate? Let's see. Okay, let's spend some time on this one. This is, I have to tell you guys, and you guys know that Neff and I and others in here, we used to believe macroevolution. We used to believe in that until we educated ourselves. And I believe sincerely, not to offend anybody, I believe there's only two reasons why someone would still believe in evolution, even after what we're going through. You guys noticed here that I don't know if that guy, the one's still here. We don't have these millions of transitional fossils. That right there, that's game over right there. Then we have DNA, which is empirical proof of design. That's game over there. It's just too many hoops that I have to jump through, and I can't believe in something of which there's absolutely no evidence. And question 9 is a major Achilles heel of evolution. And I would really encourage, oh yeah, the one, no problem. Okay, let's do this. So the one, you can get on and you can talk about this, and then afterwards, Neff, did you want to talk after the one? So go ahead, the one. So there's the question. He's going to talk about it. Why are the expected countless millions of transitional fossils missing? Go ahead, man.
Okay, so what I want to say is that for some reason you seem to think that we're supposed to get a fossilization of every fossil or every living thing that ever lived, which just isn't true. There's very much a rarity to the fossilization process. And okay, if every fossil that ever lived created a fossil, we would have billions of unrelated fossils at this point. Right now, even if we're not counting transitional forms or anything, even if we don't say they exist, we only have about 250 fossils of non-human things. Oh, transitions did fossilize, Neff, and I'm about to name one. Okay, this is probably one you'll be familiar with, and you'll probably have an argument against it, but let me give my argument for it first, okay? The Archeopteryx. Now, I'm sure you're plenty familiar with that. The common complaint to this transitional fossil is that it has no evidence of actually being a transitional fossil, and it's most likely a bird. Maybe an odd bird, but you'd argue that it's a bird just the same. Okay, I'll give you the mic after I'm done. Now, there are a few things I want you to explain before I can concede that it's a bird. Some things like the lack of cranial components permitting stylolytic kinesis, for one thing. Why are the sternal ribs absent in it? Why does manual digit 4 isn't it consistent with manual digit 3? Why is the triocele canal absent? Before these objections are answered, we're going to have to reserve judgment that it's definitely a bird. I think you're going to have to answer these things. And you can go on.
Okay, yeah. Archeopteryx is a unique bird. God created various kinds, right? And he created many kinds, thousands of kinds, and many kinds are very similar to other kinds. For example, no creationist would say that a house cat, a domestic cat, is of the same kind as a lion. Obviously, God created something higher than kind in his mind, and then created creatures within that. Say, for example, we would look at a house cat and a lion and clearly say, obviously they're both cat, right? But they can't be of the same kind, because they're so different in size and they're incapable of reproduction. Well, the same is true of birds. God created a unique bird. That doesn't mean an ostrich and emus are pretty unique too. But one of the problems for evolutionists regarding this Archeopteryx claim is that birds, fully formed modern style birds, appear in the fossil in the strata of the Earth 20 million years older than what evolutionists believe the strata that are found, Archeopteryx was found in, existed. Using the geologic column of the evolutionist, the age time for the strata that they believe in, modern birds are found 20 million years older in the strata than Archeopteryx. So how is Archeopteryx a transitional form if modern birds already existed 20 million years before? If you doubt what I'm saying, go to Oregon State University and read their article, Discovery Raises New Doubts About Dinosaur-Bird Links, June 9, 2009, phys.org.com. So, how is Archeopteryx transitional if modern birds existed 20 million years before it did? First off, and furthermore, evolutionists believe that birds evolved from land-dwelling creatures. This is much like the bat idea. It's really rather quite preposterous. How is it possible for a four-legged creature to transition so that its front legs become wings while its back legs become diminutive, and the thing still survive and not become food for some bigger predators? Because in this imaginary transitional process, the front legs would have to be transforming into wings. And while that was happening at some stage, that creature would no longer be able to fly, would not yet be able to fly, and it would not be able to run properly anymore either. It would be at a horrible disadvantage. Natural selection would remove such a freaky beast from the earth. It would just go by the wayside. It would be food for easy food for predators, first off. Thirdly, Archeopteryx is a true bird. It had hollow bones for flight. This is a characteristic of birds. It has a curved breastbone, also characteristic of birds. Has perching bird claws with a grasping hallux or hind toe. That's a perching bird feature. That's a bird feature. Birds have digit types 2, 3, 4, while theropods have digit types 1, 2, 3. This means that the digits of birds did not evolve into theropod dinosaurs. See? They have different numbers of digits. Birds and theropod dinosaurs have different numbers of digits. Again, where is the genetic information going to come from? A duplication of existing information would place, like in humans, with an extra finger, where it normally goes, not where it shouldn't be. And if it put it where it shouldn't be, how could it have perfect function from the beginning? Well, it couldn't. It would be a hindrance. The organism would fall forward. It couldn't walk straight anymore. You see? This transition of bird toe types to theropod dinosaur types is not plausible. First, and then you have the problem with the feathers evolving. Feathers are astonishingly ingenious devices. The idea that a feather could evolve is ridiculous. Now, evolutionists actually claim that scales on creatures that existed before birds evolved into feathers. Oh my goodness. That's like saying that there's a box here. I mean, there is a sphere here, and the sphere evolved into the box with nothing in between, just because we want to believe it. The difference between a scale and a feather is unbelievable. And there's no transitional forms in the fossil record that show any kind of evolution from scales to feathers. This is just one more utterly stupid claim of evolutionists that they just can't let go of, and they still put forth. It's ridiculous. The difference is astonishing between the two. Feathers are ingenious design. Absolutely ingenious. No, Archeopteryx is a true bird, and it has bird features: hollow breastbones, curved breastbones, bird-type toes. The thing that evolutionists point to is the fact that its jaw opened up at the bottom instead of in the middle, like normal modern birds. See, and they say this is evidence that it evolved from some kind of dinosaur creature. Well, not at all. Crocodiles open their mouth with the top comes up and the bottom stays stationary. But alligators are the other way around. Their bottom jaw opens up and comes up when they shut it. And yet, clearly, these two creatures are of the same kind. Clearly, they're of the same kind. And yet here's a structural design difference in the hinge of the jawbone, and they're still of the same kind. It's because and so you see, if evolution were true, it would have to produce scales to feathers, lunacy. It would have to have caused, and there are birds with teeth, by the way, that still exist today. So Archeopteryx, I know atheists like to tout that, evolutionists say, well, it has teeth, it had teeth. There are modern birds that have teeth. There are birds on this planet right now that have teeth. And the fossil record shows there have always been birds with teeth. So none of the features of Archeopteryx demonstrate in any way that it's some kind of a transitional form. They demonstrate only that real birds have always existed. And the Archeopteryx is just an example of a creature that was a unique design of bird. And the entire genus of that kind is probably extinct now. And the only example that we happen to have found is Archeopteryx.
Hey, Nev, I appreciate that, man. Hey, I want to ask you a question on this page so you can go through this. Okay, you see where it says, why are the expected countless millions of transitional fossils missing? I remember one time you were talking about, I believe, Michael Behe, what he was saying on how we should have all types of fossils. Could you explain that, why it doesn't make sense that if macroevolution was true, we should have literally millions and millions, if not billions, of fossils showing transition. Would you mind talking about the problem, the problem of transitional fossils being missing? And remember what you're talking about, Michael Behe, I believe you were talking about his book. So listen to this, guys, because this is, before Neff gets on, let me tell you something. This is one thing where I realized, well, wait a minute. It's impossible. It's impossible for macroevolution to be true, because there should be, I'll let Neff get on, but there should be all types of fossils showing transition. And if someone ever says, well, fossilization is rare, we only have 1 or 2 fossils we found of any type, that's a lie. I've been researching this, and they're continuing to find fossils, over 1 billion. Over 1 billion from what I've been looking at, and Neff, correct me if I'm wrong, but over time, throughout history, we've had over 1 billion fossils. What we don't have are transitional fossils. Over 1 billion. So if someone ever says, here's what I've noticed, and the evolution will say, well, we got all types of fossils. And I go, and they all show microevolution. They don't show macroevolution. They don't show transition. They'll say, fossilization is rare. Then they switch to fossilization being rare. I go, wait a minute, I thought you just said we have types of fossils. The fact of the matter is we have all types of fossils, over 1 billion that we've collected. Imagine that, guys, over 1 billion. I remember Micah said this once. He goes, you'd think we'd have just one that would show transition, and we don't, guys. And I'm going to tell you, the evolutionists, they're worried about this. They're wringing their hands. This is why this fictional evolutionary theory is going to die a death. I believe it's going to happen in our lifetime, and I think it's about time we take out the wooden stake of creationism and we plunge it into the heart of this dishonest fictional myth of evolution. Now, I'm talking as an ex-atheist. I'm now a Christian. I'm a creationist. And I think it's good that we talk about these things. I think evolution helps to bring people to God. And what I mean by that is when they see that it's not true. And Neff, remember when you talked about when you found out it wasn't true also, how you kind of get upset that we were lied to? I thought, I can't believe my teachers, of course, I went to a public school system. I can't believe they lied. I did a radio show where I had I took live callers. I had 2 guys call up. I had a bunch of people call up, but 2 of them called up, and they admitted that their teacher said to them that they don't believe evolution is true. And then another guy called up and said, and I got the audio of that. There's all types of good, honest teachers that say, you know, look, I don't believe it's true, but the state makes me indoctrinate you. I mean, the state makes me teach this to you. And I think people have the right to be angry and upset that their children is being taught this crud. You have the right to be upset that your children are being lied to about this. It's religion that they're teaching your kids. This is religion, this evolution stuff. So, Neff, if you can get on and talk about the blatant reason why evolution can't be true, because we don't have the evidence of this transitional fossils. And also remember, you're talking about how many fossils we would have. Right, yeah, Knight says, why don't they ever say another missing link? That's right. Where is this missing link? There's none. So go ahead now. And listen closely, guys, because this is something that I think, especially if you're a Christian, if I can just say something, if you're a Christian and you're concerned with truth, I think that there is a aspect of atheist humanism that is evolution. And Neff, you said this one time, and I got to quote Neff on this. He goes, look, the reason why atheists promote evolution is because if evolution is not true, they're toast. They're toast. Already, modern science shows that the universe had a beginning. Already we're seeing empirical proof of design through DNA. The only game in town that atheists have is evolution. That's the only game in town. And now us Christian creationists, we're going to destroy that just like we did Zeus. When's the last time you guys heard of Zeus? Not in a long time. You know why? Because the good Christians destroyed this fake belief in Zeus. And now what we're going to do, we're going to destroy this fictional evolution. Hold on, guys. I'm on a roll. How many of you guys saw that Clint Eastwood movie, Unforgiven? Well, there's a part in the movie which is really epic where Clint Eastwood, he's going to go in and have a gunfight with the bad guy, right? And he walks into the saloon and they say, "You're Josie Wells," or whatever his name was, right? And he starts saying all the other gunfighters that he shot down, right? He goes, "That's right. I've had a lot of gun battles in my time, and I've shot this person." And he's talking about all these guys that he had gunfights with, and then he tells the bad guy, let's say the bad guy's name is Little Bill. Wasn't it Little Bill? He goes, "And now I'm here to kill you, Little Bill." So Christianity has destroyed the evil of Zeus. It's destroyed all types of false fictional things. And now we're here to destroy evolution. So, Thor is dead. Yes, you could thank the Christians for that. You know what else the Christians destroyed? We destroyed slavery. It was the Christians and the Quakers that helped destroy the evil of slavery in the West. It wasn't the atheist folks. And by the way, did you guys hear that Richard Dawkins, in his family tree, his relatives were slave masters? Did you guys hear about that? I'm not kidding you. Go to conservapedia.com, click on Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins' relatives, his family tree, they were slave masters. I'm not kidding you. Richard Dawkins, the evolutionist, his family was in the slave trade. They were evil, wicked slave masters. All right, so, okay, Neff's going to get on, and we're going to talk about how we're driving a wooden stake through this fictional evil fairy tale of evolution, just like we destroyed Zeus and Thor, and now we're here to destroy evolution. But listen, the truth will set you free. So go ahead, listen to this, guys. All joking aside, this is why evolution cannot be true. Just this page alone, you can see this is why evolution still in the year 2012 has not been proven. Just this page alone can do it. But go ahead now.
Yeah, the fossils should demonstrate evolution if evolution were true. You're right, they've discovered at least 1 billion fossils, uh, hundreds of millions of which are fish or sea creature fossils. And if evolution had taken place, then this transition from fish to amphibian tetrapods should have been exceedingly well documented by the fossil record. The argument that evolutionists make is that, well, fossilization is a rare process, so it shouldn't have produced the transitions. Well, that's ridiculous, because if fossilization is a blind process, and it's going to capture whatever happens, so even if fossilization were rare, then it still would have captured these transitional forms, see? But it just didn't. What we see is creatures of one homology and another. Kenneth Miller likes to promote this idea of whale evolution, and that idea has been thoroughly debunked. There are many evolutionist scientists who themselves acknowledge that the transitional forms for evolution are just missing. I know that comes as a shocker to most evolutionists who are laypersons. It comes to a shock to them. They don't believe that. They say, what? No, that can't be true. But it is true, I promise you. There are numerous evolutionist scientists who acknowledge that the transitional forms that should demonstrate evolution are just missing. They're just not there. And I could provide, if you want to see some, go to my YouTube channel and watch a video called The Fossil Record Part 1, in which I put in quotes, and you can read for yourself, the statements of at least 30, maybe 50 different prominent evolutionist scientists who state themselves that the transitional forms for evolution are absent from the fossil record. I'll give you a couple right here, and then I'll discuss something else. Let's see. Stephen Jay Gould, an ardent proponent of punctuated equilibrium, which is a theory that basically states that the absence of evidence is evidence that it happened quickly, which is ridiculous. That's not science nor scientific. That's anti-science. He stated, Lyell relied heavily upon 2 bits of cunning to establish his uniformitarian views as the only true geology. First, he set up a straw man to demolish something. The geologic record does not seem to require catastrophes. Rocks are fractured and contorted. Whole faunas are wiped out. Now he's talking about the flood when he's talking about these things. To circumvent this literal appearance, Lyell imposed his imagination upon the evidence. The geologic record, he argued, is extremely imperfect, and we must interpolate it into what can be reasonably infer but cannot see. The catastrophists were a hard-nosed empiricists of their day, but not the blinded theological apologists. So what he's saying is essentially is that ever since Charles Lyell, evolutionists have had to imagine that this evolution has taken place according to the fossil record. That's a very damning self-admission. Very damning. In 1981, evolutionist Mark Ridley, who currently serves as professor of zoology at Oxford, was forced to confess, quote, in any case, no real evolutionist, whether gradualist or punctuationist, uses the fossil record as evidence in favor of the theory of evolution as opposed to special creation. Now, why did he say that? Because it doesn't support the evolution theory. That's why. Ernst Mayr was once chairman or president, I can't remember which, of the American, what was it, Scientific Association of Scientists. I forgot the name of it. But he was at one time the world's most prominent evolutionist paleontologist. His name is Ernst Mayr, and he stated, and I quote, Paleontologists have long been aware of the seeming contradiction between Darwin's postulate of gradualism, confirmed by the work of population genetics — he's wrong about that — and the actual findings of paleontology. Following phyletic lines through time seems to reveal only minimal gradual changes, but no clear evidence for any change of a species into a different genus, or for the gradual origin of any evolutionary novelty. Anything truly novel always seems to appear quite abruptly in the fossil record." End quote. Stephen Jay Gould said, "The history of the fossil species includes two features particularly inconsistent with gradualism. One, stasis. Most species exhibit no directional change during their tenure on the Earth. They appear in the fossil record looking much the same as when they disappeared. Morphological change is usually limited and directionless. And two, sudden appearance. In any local area, a species does not arise gradually by the steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed." End quote. Now, Stephen Jay Gould was one of the most famous paleontologists in the world, and he was an evolutionist. Niles Eldredge, Nobel Prize recipient, geneticist, evolutionist, co-discoverer of the double helix structure of the DNA molecule, one of the most famous scientists in the world, stated, "No wonder paleontologists shied from evolution for so long. It seems never to have happened. Assiduous collecting up cliff faces yields zigzags, minor oscillations, and very occasionally slight accumulation of change over millions of years at a rate too slow to really account for the prodigious change that has occurred in evolutionary history." End quote. Now, what he's stating is that we see varieties within the kind, but we see no morphological change from one kind to a new kind. That's what he's saying. Richard Lewontin, evolutionist, former professor of zoology and professor of biology at Harvard University, stated, quote, "For millions of years, species remain unchanged in the fossil record." End quote. Unchanged. Now, if random mutation is a mechanism for evolutionary change, why should anything be unchanged for millions of years? It couldn't be. Especially with what we have learned about the effects of random genetic mutation in the last 50 years. So, you see, and it goes on and on and on. Evolutionist scientists themselves acknowledge that the fossils do not support evolutionary theory. Now, what you'll hear is a lot is that evolutionists will say, well, every creature is transitional. Okay, well, that's fine and dandy. You're welcome to believe that. But if you believe that every creature and every fossil is transitional, where are the intermediates? Where's the series of fossils that demonstrates that one genus evolved into a new genus? They don't exist. It's not there. See? So you're welcome to believe that if a human being experiences a little change over time, or any other species in the world, any other kind of cosmetic change over time, you're welcome to believe that's evolutionary theory and extrapolate in your imagination. Oh, well, that means morphological change over time. Now, wait a minute. You just stepped outside of science. Because the fossil record doesn't support any such thing. And any evolutionist can put forth any claim of evolution of any fossil record in this world, and a Christian creationist can easily shoot it down. They don't care if you're talking about fish into amphibian tetrapods, if you're talking about marsupials, mammals, dinosaurs, birds. It doesn't matter what creature you say evolved from one kind into a new kind. You can put forth what you claim is some kind of a transitional form, and evolutionists have come up with about 60 or 70 of them now, I think. What they call strong evidence for it. Why 60 or 70? There should be 60 or 70,000 or million. Not 60 or 70. 60 or 70 million. But see, I'll point out one example and then I'll get off the mic. Evolutionists like Kenneth Miller, puts forth this idea that Basilosaurus and whatnot evolved into whales. But the problem is, what they put forth is fully formed creatures. In one example, one picture he puts next to the other, he has a picture of a creature that has fully formed fins at its anterior. That is, in its rear, it has fully formed fins. So you're talking about a formed-finned creature, okay? And then right next to it, he puts a creature that has two fins, none in the rear. And says, see, it evolved. No, I don't see that it evolved. I see that all the transitional forms from four-finned creatures to two-finned creatures are missing. That's what I see. That's what the fossil record is. The absence of transitional forms. They're not there. If whales evolved from some land-dwelling creature, there should be examples, countless ones, in which we see that certain bones and tendons, whatnot, disappeared in this one. And then we see another. There's less bones, less tendons. Another, less bone, less tendon. Less bone, less tendon. Less bone, less tendon. There should be 50, if not 1,000, in between Ambulocetus and whales. Or Pakicetus in whales. But there's none. Nothing. You just got creatures with 4 fins and creatures with 2. We call them whales. There's no physiological evidence to support this imagination of the evolutionist. That everything that is for which there is no physical evidence actually happened, despite the fact that science doesn't give us any evidence to say that it does, according to science. Science is about what's observable, testable, repeatable. It's not about what your imagination says. That's not science. And Kenneth Miller is way outside of science. Okay, so I guess I'll get, I covered that pretty much as I can in about 5 or 10 minutes. Thanks, Shock, for the opportunity to help you. And I'll get off the mic and give it back to you, man.
Oh yeah, thanks, Nev. We'll have an open mic now where you guys all can get on. But I used to believe in evolution, but in all honesty, when I was in high school, it was sort of fed to us, and you had to answer the questions the way they want you to answer it on the test, otherwise you failed the class. But then as I got out of school and I was able to actually read about these things and educate myself, become a true free thinker, it was like a cumulative case against evolution. For example, we talked about DNA, which is empirical proof of design. There's no transitional fossils. We talked about that. So that's 2 things now, strike 2 against it. And then the complexity of the cell. Remember we talked about, I believe it was Barrow and Tipler's book, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle, where they said there's at least 10 things that need to for human evolution to be possible, but they said each of which is so improbable that there's not enough time. The sun would have already ceased to be a main sequence star and would have incinerated the Earth. Even 4.54 billion years old, which is what some people believe the age of the Earth is. I don't believe it's that old, but even if you take the maximum age of the Earth, 4.54 billion years old, they still say it's not enough time because of the complexity of it. Also, Darwin and Huxley, they got it wrong. They thought that the cell was just a glob of goo. They didn't know the extreme complexity of it, so that's another mistake. And then also evolution fails the scientific method. Another thing, too, which caused me to doubt evolution is I notice when people believe in evolution, I talk to them, and like 9 times out of 10, they're like atheists. So they have or a naturalist. They have a presuppositional view of the world on naturalism. And like, for example, we had some evolutionists in here today, and every one of them was atheist. Atheists and agnostics, And so I'm like, well, you know what? What else are you going to expect them to say? They're not going to say they believe in creation because they're a naturalist, So that's another thing too, is every single time the person will say evolution's true, and then I start talking to them about this, and I go, wait a minute, are you an atheist? And they go, yes. And I go, I rest my case. Another thing too is sometimes you'll find people, you guys probably have noticed this, where they don't even know the difference between micro and macro evolution. So they'll think change within limits, like different types of horses, different type of cats, different types of dogs. They'll say, well, there you go, therefore all of evolution is true. And we're like, no, that's just micro, that's just God's creation, everyone believes in that. That's not macroevolution. And they'll go, well, what's macroevolution? And then when you tell them, they're like, oh no, I don't believe in that. So I really think, and I'm not the only one that's saying this, and neither is Neff and the rest of you guys, the word around the science community and the word on the internet and the word in science journals is really that evolution's dying. It's going extinct, really. They already got rid of the chemical origin of life scenarios where they used to teach that in schools, that there was a chemical origin of life where lightning struck the primordial ooze and life was formed. And they don't even teach that in schools anymore because they said that broken down. Science broke that down and said it's not true anymore. So anyways, you know what we're going to be doing, guys? All this week, we're doing Creation Week. Well, actually for 4 weeks. I think we have 3 weeks left. So if you guys click below this video that you're watching, you go to shotgunnow.net and you can go into the chat room and you can talk to us there on voice. Also check out creation.com if you want to get these 15 questions. I'll open up the chat for you guys. And guys, this will be on YouTube. If you want to download this from my YouTube channel, go ahead. You could always download any of the videos I have for free. Of course, you don't have to ask me, just download them if you need them. So this will be on my YouTube channel. You could go ahead and download it. And thanks, guys, for participating. And thanks to the evolutionists in here that also participated. I'm sure you'll be creationists soon. And I mean that sincerely.